You are trapped in an invisible cycle. A cycle that feeds on your energy, your dreams, your vitality. A cycle that slowly consumes you, even when you believe you are in control. And no, this is not drama. This is not an exaggeration. It is the brutal reality that most people refuse to see. Every day, you wake up and carry within you forces that shape every decision, every thought, every impulse. Forces that do not ask for your permission. They do not follow your logic. They do not respect your plans. You say, "Today will be different. Today I will not sabotage myself. Today I will take the reins of my life." But before you know it, there you are again, repeating the same behaviors you swore to abandon, diving into the same distractions, feeding the same vices, avoiding what matters most. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is not a matter of discipline, not even of motivation. There is something much deeper happening. Something that Freud, over a century ago, was one of the first to see with brutal clarity. According to him, human beings are not driven solely by the desire to live, grow, and create. No, within each of us resides a force as old as life itself, Thanatos, the death drive. A blind impulse that seeks dissolution, self-destruction, a return to nothingness. And to make everything even more perverse, the human brain has learned to transform this self-destruction into pleasure. Every little sabotage, every repetition of a destructive pattern, every choice that deep down you know will harm you. All these actions are rewarded by your own dopamine system. It is your own brain reinforcing behaviors that destroy you. You feel a small relief, a fleeting pleasure, and the cycle continues. But you do not realize it. Because in the modern world, Thanatos does not manifest in obvious ways. It is not a conscious desire to die. No, it hides behind masks, immediate pleasure, distraction, compulsions, procrastination, subtle vices, mental anesthetics, social media, pornography, alcohol, food, games, toxic relationships, excessive work. All of this can be, without you realizing it, the camouflaged expression of this death drive. An unconscious desire to escape, to destroy, to erase oneself. Have you ever felt this? That internal resistance that arises whenever you try to change. That silent voice that whispers it is not worth trying. That invisible force that pulls you back to the same point, no matter how hard you fight to get out of it. This is not weakness. It is your own psyche, divided. A constant battlefield between Eros, the force of life, of creation, and Thanatos, the dark impulse of self-destruction. And this is what we are going to talk about here. No beating around the bush. I want you to understand once and for all why you live trapped in this cycle. Why you keep repeating the same mistakes, even when you know you are destroying yourself. And more importantly, how you can start to break these internal chains. If you have the courage for it, stay with me. This video will be a journey into the most hidden forces of your mind. And perhaps in the end, you will no longer be the same. The human mind is a field of forces in constant conflict. Freud was one of the first to understand that we are not cohesive, rational beings, perfectly adjusted. On the contrary, our psyche is the stage of a silent war, where antagonistic impulses compete for the direction of our lives. At the center of this battle are two primordial impulses that shape everything we are, Eros and Thanatos. In Greek mythology, Eros, or Cupid, is the god of love and creation, a symbol of the life drive that seeks to preserve, unite, and generate life. It is the force that compels us to create, to build, to preserve. It is what moves us toward pleasure, connection, and growth. Every time you seek to learn something new, engage in a project, build meaningful relationships, or take care of your body and mind, it is Eros that is at work. It drives the development of civilization, human progress, art, science, and the perpetuation of the species. It is the energy that pushes us forward toward life. But symbolically alongside Eros, inseparable and equally powerful, resides Thanatos, the death drive, the Greek mythological figure that personifies death, a dark, hidden force that seeks the opposite. Thanatos is the desire for destruction, dissolution, and a return to the inorganic. Freud proposed that in every living being there is an unconscious impulse to nullify the tensions of life, to cease the constant effort of existing, to regress to the original state, to nothingness. It is a longing for absolute rest, for the cessation of struggle, for the absence of pain and desire. In daily life, Thanatos does not manifest in a direct, explicit way. It is not a cry of, "I want to die." No, it is much more subtle, insidious. It infiltrates the small acts of self-sabotage, in the destructive behaviors you repeat without understanding why, in the vices that numb but corrode, in the relationships that weaken you, in the procrastination that undermines your opportunities, in the fleeting pleasure you seek, even knowing it will bring suffering later. And all of this is reinforced by a brain that, deceived by these immediate stimuli, releases dopamine, creating a vicious cycle. It is the death drive disguised as pleasure. This is the perverse game that happens within you every day. Do not be fooled. Eros and Thanatos do not exclude each other. They coexist, dance together, intertwine in every choice, in every impulse. What you feel as pleasure may actually be Thanatos in action. What you avoid may be the force of Eros trying to emerge. But how to identify these manifestations in your daily life? How to perceive when self-destruction masquerades as pleasure? This is what we will explore in the next part. We will dive deep into how Thanatos disguises itself in the modern world, and how it may be slowly killing you without you realizing it. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. In the contemporary world, Thanatos does not appear dressed in tragedy or explicit death. On the contrary, he hides behind the most attractive and seductive masks. He does not call you to the abyss saying, "Come, destroy yourself." No. He whispers with a sweet voice, "Just a little more. You deserve it. It's not a big deal." And you believe it. The everyday life of modern existence is the perfect setting for the disguised manifestation of the death drive. We live surrounded by stimuli that feed compulsive and self-destructive behaviors, reinforced by the brain's dopamine system. Social media, pornography, junk food, alcohol, rampant consumption, endless series, video games, toxic relationships. All of this can be, and often is, the vehicle of Thanatos acting through you. How many times have you told yourself, "Today I will change, today I will not repeat that behavior"? But by the end of the day, there you are again, trapped in the same cycle, exhausted, empty, guilty. This is not weakness. It is not a lack of character. It is Thanatos acting through mental and emotional patterns that you do not even notice. These are repetitive and destructive behaviors that, even when aware of the damage they cause, you insist on maintaining. Why? Because there is an unconscious desire to return to a zero state, to the absence of pain, tension, and effort. Living is maintaining psychic tension. It is being in motion, in constant construction. But a part of you longs for the opposite: cessation, apathy, numbness. Every behavior that temporarily anesthetizes you, that makes you escape the pain or anxiety of existence, is a small triumph of Thanatos. That is why immediate pleasure is so dangerous. Because the brain, by associating dopamine with these behaviors, reinforces the cycle. Every slip, every repetition, strengthens the neural pathway of self-destruction. It is a perverse system. The more you give in to the behavior, the harder it becomes to break free from it. And thus, without realizing it, you are feeding what is slowly killing you. But the situation is even more complex. Thanatos does not only act in obvious vices, it also manifests in more subtle forms. Chronic procrastination, fear of exposure, constant postponement of one's own dreams, maintaining relationships that weaken you. All of these are expressions of a psyche sabotaged by unconscious forces. And here comes the crucial question. How does the brain collaborate with all of this? How does dopamine, this neurotransmitter that should propel us toward life, end up becoming an accomplice of self-destruction? This is what we will explore in the next part. We will uncover the role of the reward circuit and understand how pleasure can become the deadliest trap of your mind. Now you need to understand what may be the most treacherous trap of your mind, the role of dopamine in reinforcing your self-destructive behaviors. And here, it is necessary to dispel one of the greatest popular misconceptions. Dopamine is not the substance of pleasure. It is not just responsible for you to feel good. What dopamine actually does is much more complex. It is the neurotransmitter and hormone that plays several important functions in the body, including regulation of movement, mood, motivation, expectation, and pleasure. In other words, it commands the wanting, not the liking. Every time you engage in a behavior that, at some point, was associated with a reward, no matter how minimal or illusory it may be, your brain registers that association. Dopamine acts by creating a neural circuit that says, repeat this, do it again, now. It doesn't matter if the behavior is actually beneficial or if it is destroying you. If the brain has learned that it brought relief or momentary pleasure, the circuit is reinforced, and you are driven to seek more and more of that experience, almost automatically. Now imagine this mechanism, a powerful tool of evolution, which should propel you to seek survival, reproduction, and healthy social connections, being hijacked. This is exactly what happens in the modern world. Superpotent artificial stimuli bombard your brain daily, creating dopaminergic associations with empty or destructive behaviors. Social media, pornography, fast food, alcohol, drugs, consumerism, endless series, digital notifications, all these stimuli are designed to activate your dopamine circuit and addict you. You open your phone just for a minute, and before you know it, an hour has passed. You eat an ultra-processed food, feel instant pleasure, and soon find yourself wanting more. You buy something online, feel that brief excitement, and shortly after find yourself looking for something else to buy. Each of these small repetitions reinforces the neural pathway. The more you repeat, the stronger the impulse becomes. You don't want that behavior anymore. You are compelled to it. Your brain has learned that this brings relief. And even if you consciously know that you are sabotaging yourself, your body acts on its own. Now add to this what Freud revealed about the nature of the death drive. Thanatos does not act directly. It is not a clear desire to die, but an unconscious tendency to escape the tension of existence, to dissolve the self, to avoid the pain and effort of life. And what are these compulsive, addictive, and self-destructive behaviors, if not small steps toward dissolution? Every time you procrastinate, every time you give in to an addiction, every time you seek fleeting relief in a behavior that weakens you, it is Thanatos acting through you, with the help of dopamine. It is your own brain turning against you. Make no mistake, this combination is a perfect trap. Thanatos creates the unconscious desire to flee, to nullify oneself. Dopamine rewards these escape behaviors, and the more you give in, the stronger the cycle becomes. That is why you return day after day to the same compulsions. Why you sabotage yourself, even knowing that it will harm you. It is not rational. It is not a moral failing. It is a deep mechanism of the psyche, reinforced by your neurobiological system. And as frightening as this may seem, there is an even deeper reason why you cannot simply stop. Because at the center of this cycle are unconscious forces much older and more powerful than your conscious will. They are structures of your own ego, your superego, the repressed impulses you have carried since childhood. They sabotage your attempts at change, generate invisible resistance, and keep you imprisoned in the cycle. And this is what we are going to explore now. Now, we come to one of the hardest truths to face. You are not the master of yourself. No matter how much modern discourse insists on repeating that you have control over your life, that you just have to want to change, the reality is different. Freud was relentless in stating, the ego is not the master in its own house. Most of what you think, feel, and do does not arise from your consciousness, but from unconscious forces. And that is why, even after understanding the cycle, even after realizing the trap, you cannot stop. The human psyche, according to Freud, is composed of three instances: the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is the primitive source of impulses, desires, and drives, including Eros and Thanatos. It knows no logic, morality, or reality. It simply wants to satisfy its impulses. The ego is the part of the mind that tries to mediate between the ID and the external world. It seeks to act rationally, adapted to reality, but its strength is limited. And the superego, it represents the internalization of social norms, morality, parental and cultural expectations. It watches, judges, punishes, and often with a cruel severity. When you try to change a self-destructive behavior, you are not just dealing with a bad habit. You are facing a deep conflict between these internal forces. On one side, the id and its drives, Eros and primarily Thanatos, pushing you toward immediate pleasure, toward dissolution, toward escape. On the other, the superego, which condemns, criticizes, generates guilt and shame. And the ego, fragile, trying to balance this war, being crushed by the weight of these impulses and these internal voices. The result? Invisible resistance. Even when you consciously decide that you want to stop, that you want to change, an underground force emerges that sabotages your attempts. Suddenly, you find yourself procrastinating, distracting yourself, rationalizing old behaviors. Just one more time. I deserve this today. It's not that serious. These justifications do not arise from reason. They arise from the unconscious forces that fear change. Because changing requires facing the pain you have been avoiding. It requires giving up anesthesia, false comfort, and Thanatos hates that. It prefers to keep you asleep, even if it costs you your health, your happiness, your life. Moreover, there is an even more perverse factor: the unconscious feeling of guilt. Freud showed that often, people self-sabotage not only out of impulse, but out of an unconscious need for punishment. When the superego is excessively harsh, when repressed guilt accumulates, the individual begins to seek, unconsciously, behaviors that lead to failure and suffering. It is a form of self-punishment, of atoning for a guilt that they do not even understand. That is why you repeat the same mistakes. That is why, even aware of the destruction, you continue. Your unconscious does not want you to change. It fears discomfort, fears repressed pain, fears the dissolution of the identity built around these patterns. And as long as you do not confront these hidden forces, you will continue to be their prisoner. But there is a way. It is possible to start breaking this cycle. It is possible to integrate these forces, give voice to what has been repressed, reconfigure the patterns that currently imprison you. And that is what we will talk about in the next part. How you can, through awareness and confrontation, begin to dismantle self-sabotage and regain control of your life. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. Breaking this cycle is not simple. It is not a matter of willpower. It is not about thinking positive or repeating empty motivational phrases. What you are facing here is a deep battle between forces that have been acting within you long before you were even aware of them. It is a structural conflict of your psyche, between the unconscious desire for dissolution and self-destruction, and the life force that still pulses within you, wanting to live, create, and expand. The first step is what we are doing now, becoming aware. As Freud said, making the unconscious conscious is the foundation of true transformation. You cannot fight against an enemy you cannot see. When you understand that procrastination is not just laziness, that addictions are not merely a lack of control, that sabotages are not mere bad luck, but expressions of Thanatos acting through you, you begin to reclaim some of your power. You start to see the pattern, and that which is seen can finally be transformed. But just being aware is not enough. You must face the discomfort you have been avoiding. And here is the secret that few have the courage to confront. Your self-destructive behaviors are, in part, escape mechanisms. They serve to numb pains, traumas, fears that you do not want to face directly. That is why every attempt at deep change inevitably awakens resistance. Because changing means confronting those shadows. It means touching what has been repressed, what has been hidden, what has been buried deep in your unconscious. That is why the path involves integration. It is not about eliminating Thanatos. It is not about destroying the part of you that seeks escape or relief. That would be a futile violence. The psyche does not work that way. Thanatos is part of you, but you can integrate it. You can recognize its origins, understand its impulses, learn to channel that energy in a more constructive way. How? Through deep self-knowledge, through small but consistent adjustments in your routine, through therapy, through analysis, through introspective meditation, through practices that help you bring to light what has been hidden. It is a process of soul excavation, and by doing this, you begin to regain agency. You start to notice when a behavior is a movement of Eros, of life, and when it is a disguise of Thanatos. You begin to create space between impulse and action. You start to be able to choose. Furthermore, it is crucial to rebuild the dopamine circuit. The brain is plastic. The pathways that have been reinforced by years of compulsions can, with effort and consistency, be weakened. But this requires replacing destructive behaviors with sources of pleasure and fulfillment that serve Eros, not Thanatos. Building new habits, new practices, new ways of dealing with the tension and suffering of life, not through escape, but through the courageous confrontation of reality. And it is here that true transformation happens. When you stop fleeing, when you accept to face your own pain, your own shadow, that pain that comes with the effort of change, when you commit to truly live and not just exist anesthetized. It will not be easy, it will not be comfortable, but it is the only way to break the cycle and free yourself. And now, in the next part, we will close this journey. I will show you why this knowledge is not just theoretical. It is a real tool that you can use to start today transforming your life. Because knowing all this only has value if you act. Get ready. It is time to make a commitment to yourself. Now you know. What holds you back is not simply a bad habit. It's not a lack of willpower. It's not laziness or disorganization. It's a deep conflict between forces that have existed within you all along. It's the constant dance between Eros and Thanatos, between the life drive and the death drive. It's a dopaminergic reward system that has been hijacked, reinforcing behaviors that numb you, that destroy you. It's the unconscious acting as an invisible saboteur, repeating patterns that you often inherited, that were programmed into your psyche without you even being aware of it. And now you have a choice. You can pretend you didn't hear. You can close this window, go on with your day, and dive once again into the same cycles of self-sabotage. Or you can start to do things differently. You can gradually bring to light the shadows you've been carrying. You can stop fleeing from pain and discomfort. You can begin to build a new relationship with yourself. It won't be easy, it won't be quick, but it is possible. If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you, the part that still wants to live, grow, create, is calling you. Don't ignore that voice. Use this knowledge. Question your daily behaviors. Ask yourself, does what I'm doing right now symbolically serve Eros or Thanatos? Does this build me up or tear me down? Am I seeking momentary pleasure, or am I nurturing something that will truly benefit me? And more, share your journey. I want to hear from you. What was the strongest insight you had while watching this video? In which part did you see yourself reflected? Leave your comment down below. Let's create a space for exchange. Because self-knowledge is not a path walked alone. Sharing your perceptions can help others who are going through the same struggle. And if this video made sense to you, if it awakened something that was dormant, don't stop here. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and most importantly, keep watching. You won't want to miss the next video, because in this journey of self-knowledge, every piece of the puzzle counts. I'll see you there.